Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, nominated for the iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award. We are so happy that you're joining us today. We have a great guest coming back to the show. She is the author of the first ever Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. Her name is Kimberly Ballou, and she is with us to let us know that she has a brand new teacher's guide that goes along with her book, When Daronte's Father Went to Prison. Before Kimberly returns to the show, we want to let you know about a great book to add to your family's Christmas read aloud traditions. It is just this episode is being published just a couple of days before Christmas Day, and there's still time to add this book to your family library. Santa's 8 Izzy elves are very tech savvy. They help each other solve problems and celebrate triumphs, and they do it all in rhyme. Start a new family read aloud Christmas tradition with Dorothea Jensen's Tizzy, the Christmas shelf elf, Blizzy, the worrywart elf, Dizzy, the stowaway elf, and Frizzy, the SAD elf. These illustrated, award-winning modern Christmas stories for kids age 5 and up are available as paperbacks, ebooks, and audiobooks at Amazon or can be ordered at any bookstore. It really is a great series of books, and it would be a great addition to your family library and a great new Christmas read-aloud tradition for your family. Find out more by going to DorotheaJensen.com. That's Dorothea Jensen's Santa's Izzy Elves. It's available today at Amazon and at local bookstores. Check it out, DorotheaJensen.com. We are so excited. I feel like if there is any kind of royalty within our Reading with Your Kids podcast family, then this next guest is certainly part of that royalty. She's an old friend, meaning that she's been a friend for a long time. She's very young at heart. She's a great author, and she is the very first Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read author. Please welcome back to the show the author of When Daronte's Father Went to Prison, Kim Ballou. Kim, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. Thank you. Wow, royalty.
Well, we give that's me. That's the old man in me. You know, we call the science people, we call them deans of STEAM and all this, but you've certainly been a great part of the show because, like I said, your book was the first Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, and that helped the book be discovered by the Outside the Margins folks. Is that the name of the group that found the book?
Inside the
Margins. And we were excited about that because it was really one of the first indications that the podcast was getting noticed by people outside of our little circle of listeners. And at that time, it was a very small circle of listeners. And now it's been about a year later, and we've had a number of Reading with Kids Certified Great Reads, and the podcast has been nominated for an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award, and all this wonderful good stuff has been happening since you've been on the show. So who knows what's going to happen next?
Exactly. I'm so pleased for you, and I really was honored to be the first certified great read, or the author of the first certified great read.
Yes, well,
give the book its due.
Yes, you were someone you popped up on my Facebook radar in one of the different groups that I'm in, and I saw the book that you had written, and I said, I want this author on the show. And then my producer and I, when we read the book, we're like, this is fantastic. And we had been talking about putting together this award and a panel of reviewers, and we thought, well, this would be a wonderful book. So we invited Kim to submit it to our panel, and they just loved it. And it really kind of helped launch things. And it was a good indication for me because when Daronte's father went to prison, it has a lot of substance to it. You know, it's an important book, and I don't mean to say that to minimize any of the other books or authors that have been on the show, but this is a subject that is really important to everybody, but it's especially important to a too large segment of people in the world.
I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
That,
and you're back on the show because you've written a great teacher's guide that goes along with when Daronte's father went to prison, and so I want to get into that. But first, for all the folks out there who might be thinking, yeah, but this isn't. Now I live in the suburbs, and so I don't have to worry about any of this kind of stuff because none of the kids in my school have any parents who are dealing with the law, and that's not correct.
No, it isn't. Every day I find more and more that this is a problem that is faced by all members of society. Just 2 days ago, in fact, someone stopped me, pulled me aside, and he knew that I had written the book, but it just sort of hit him. The title of the book sort of hit him one day, and he remembered that this was something that he had dealt with a while back. He was helping at an event with an organization that ministered to families of people who are incarcerated. And this was an event that definitely was attended by people of all socioeconomic statuses. And so he was, he was excited and he was interested and he was really congratulatory toward me because he said, I didn't even know how much this book is needed until I attended, I volunteered at this event.
So why don't you?
That was great.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have an idea of the number of kids that are affected, a number of kids who have a close, a parent or grandparent or, a caregiver that is incarcerated?
Well, currently there are about 2.7 million children with a parent, one or both parents, incarcerated. So that's not even including, other relatives, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins. None of that is included. That's just children with incarcerated parents.
Now, I heard that correct. 2.5, so 2.5 million kids have one or more parents incarcerated.
It's about 2.7 million.
2.7.
Yes.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And it's, and so of course it's hitting every member of society. And it's not just inner city kids. It's, middle class families, whose parents have gotten involved in the opioid epidemic or tax evasion or some kind of embezzlement or middle class people are capable of violent crimes as well.
Exactly. And Jed, that was the reason that I started Daronte out as being from a very upper middle class family. He is not he was not from a low income background. They kind of were a bit of like jet setters. He attended a private school. He had their own backyard basketball hoop, and they had their own pool, and his mother was a stay-at-home mom. That was the lifestyle that I wanted to talk about. And all the changes that the child had to experience because they come, one right after the other. Boom, boom, boom. And the child never has an opportunity to, really process any one change before there are 5 more that he or she needs to deal with. And so you start getting all these big behavior problems because this poor child is simply overwhelmed.
And I'm sure in a lot of, hopefully not a lot, but I'm sure in some circumstances when those kids whose parent are taken, just snatched out of their phone, and no matter if it's a just arrest or whatever, the child, the parent is there 1 minute and then they're gone. the next minute, and their life is turned upside down. So, of course, there are going to be some behavior issues, and a lot of that's going to happen in school. And you're hoping that the teachers, the professionals that are dealing with the kid in the school have some kind of empathy, but you know that not everybody, and there's going to be some educators or some other students who are going to say, oh, you know, he's just like his dad. He's just like his mom. His dad's in jail because of whatever. And look at the kid. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Instead of realizing that, wow, this kid has gone through this tremendous trauma, and how can we support him or her?
Exactly. And so I wrote the book as a way to open up that conversation. I researched this book fully. A lot of what goes on in the book came from stories told to me by my students of what had happened when their parent or someone they knew had been arrested. And so I told the book from the point of view of that child. What happens once that parent is arrested? What happens to the kid? And it's like, you know, journey into the whirlwind. Everything changes, and the changes come, as I said, one right after another. The child doesn't have time to achieve any kind of state of equilibrium before something else is new and different. So I wanted to have an opportunity to show this journey that the children undertake and hopefully spark some empathy within both the adults and the other students who are reading the book. And
that is so, it's so very, very important, because no matter what you think the person who is in prison did, if you think they deserving of empathy or forgiveness, I mean, forgiveness we know is healing, not only for the person who's being forgiven, but it's forgiving, it heals the people who are offering the forgiveness. And as society, it's important for us. And I think that empathy and that conversation is where that forgiveness and that healing for everyone can begin.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's particularly important for the child, because can you imagine, Jed, being a kid who loves their parent? You know, because the thing you have to remember is that just because someone breaks the law, it doesn't mean they're a bad parent. You can be a good parent and, you know, kind of a rotten person in some ways. But imagine being the kid who loves their parent and then hears everyone talking negatively about their parent. And imagine being the kid in that situation of knowing, of wondering, well, am I bad for loving my parent? How confusing is that? That's a therapy bill right there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And from my years of working in human services and social work, I mean, I don't care what kind of parent you're talking about, but a kid is always going to feel that connection. In very, very few circumstances have I ever met a kid who's been through some kind of trauma who sits back and go, yeah, I hate my parent. I don't ever want to see them again. They always want to reconnect. They always have that hope of that parent-child relationship being mended and being brought back together. And we don't have a right to judge that. You know, that's their relationship.
Because that connection is necessary for our health and growth into functioning adults.
Well, tell us about, so we have the book, and the book is fantastic, and it's a great, like I said, it's a great place for those conversations to start in a classroom. It's also a fantastic place for those conversations to start in a home and in a family situation. But you've taken it a step further, so tell us about the specific things that teachers are going to find in your new teacher's guide.
Well, Jed, I am really excited about the teacher's guide. And let me just give you a little bit of information about why I did this. You know, teachers have a lot of demands placed on our time. I remember this from being in the classroom. And it's quite a bit to ask a teacher to not only read a book that they may not be familiar with, but then they have to come up with all the lesson plans to teach the book. And those lesson plans need to be aligned with either Common Core standards or other state standards. And that is a great deal of work. This book has 9 chapters. And to do that amount of work for every chapter, I mean, you have to come up with vocabulary. You have to come up with writing prompts and good text-dependent questions that help teach children how to analyze a book and also prepare them for standardized testing, because that's a reality in education. We can't do anything and ignore standardized testing. So I wanted to make sure that because I have been a teacher for a number of years, I figured I could take that burden off of my fellow teachers and make this book a bit more attractive as an option to teach in the classroom. Because let me tell you one thing. As a teacher, I always had reluctant readers in my classroom. Children, especially boys, who told me they hated to read. I have yet to have a single student tell me they're not interested in reading this book. You know, I do school readings, and the interest level is extremely high. Let's leave it at that. And I love it. It's a topic that might be outside a little bit of some of their experiences, but they're interested in reading about it. So with the teacher's guide, I came up with a selection of activities that are aligned with Common Core state standards, because I believe at this time, I think 28 states use Common Core standards, and they're also aligned with the Texas Educational Knowledge and Skills standards. Those are the Texas standards. So if you use one of those 2 types of standards, this study guide is already aligned. So we have vocabulary activities. We have some different close reading activities so that students are actively engaged in analyzing the text. And they're answering questions like, why did the author write something this way instead of perhaps this other way? So they're getting down to the sentence level and the phrase level analysis that is so important, first of all, for college level work, and even should be important for high school level work, but also will help them on standardized tests. So that's vocabulary, that's the close reading. Students will be writing summaries of the chapters. I also focused a lot on text-dependent questions, the TDQs. And they go a lot deeper than the old, the reading comprehension questions that we used to have. The student is forced to go back to the text to answer each of the questions, and the student must write the evidence from the text that told them what the right answer was. Now, that is some standardized test preparation.
Absolutely.
If you can do that, multiple choice is no problem.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's fabulous. And I just, so much I love about that. Number one, you are right. My wife is a teacher. She's been a teacher for 30 years. And one of the things that's happened with the podcast is every time I go to the post office box, there are a dozen books that are waiting for me unsolicited. Hey, we heard you had a podcast. Read my book. And it's like, well, thank you very much. Let me see if my wife can use them in her classroom. And they're, lots of them are really wonderful books, but she's like, maybe I'll find time just to read this to the kids, but in order for me to teach, I have to do all this other work, and I just don't have the time to do that. And also the expertise, like you said, well, teachers have all these different, suddenly, a third grade teacher not only has to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, now it's STEM and it's hygiene and it's nutrition and it's good choices, and some schools it's good touch, bad touch, and it's like, whoa. And now you want me to talk about someone going to prison. So this is a huge help. And I think, and again, I have a slight background with it in human services, and my wife's a teacher. This is really in depth, and it's certainly a lot more in depth than a lot of teachers' guides that I see along with, there's a lot of the quote unquote teachers' guides that come across our desk are a couple of coloring pages and, here's an activity you can, make a sandcastle and talk about it. This is some, just like the book, there's some real meat in this.
Exactly. And I was never the type of teacher who did, the 2 or 3 pages of lesson plan. So it's not the kind of teacher's study guide that I wrote. I wanted teachers to be able to either have a broad-based analysis for teachers who have more time to spend with the book, or the reason I provided the Common Core standards and the text standards are because each question, you can look at the charts in the beginning of the book, and whatever standard you wish to focus on for a particular chapter, it tells you exactly which questions in which chapters target those standards. So the study guide is useful in a number of ways. So if a teacher is short on time, maybe you'll do only questions 2 and 5 and really hone in on a particular standard rather than doing a more broad analysis or study of a particular chapter. So in that way, the book is really flexible because, as a teacher, some days go really well and other days you get there and through no fault of your own, there's an assembly, this happened, someone pulled the fire alarm, whatever happened, your time is short and yet you are still expected to meet those standards. So I wanted a book. I was trying my best to write a study guide that teachers could use.
And they can absolutely use this. And I'm thinking that this is a book that could, and study guide that could be used not just in the middle grade level, but also on a high school level. Maybe When Daronte's Father Went to Prison isn't necessarily a book that a high school kid might read, go to a bookstore and pick out, but it's certainly a book that could be used with this greater kind of focus and study.
Oh, absolutely. We all know, unfortunately, that there are plenty of high school students who are reading at, a second or third grade level. So depending on how you introduce the book and if they are interested, the book, as you said, it definitely has meat to it. And the grade 5 study guide, which is the one that's out right now, definitely targets those analytical skills that, as I said before, are what high school students need. So absolutely, it could be expanded.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
No, go ahead.
At the end, I include a list of various wrap-up activities because, every teacher knows his or her class best. Every single activity won't work with every group of students. And so I wanted teachers to have a broad choice of ways to assess the students' understanding and growth throughout this learning process of, studying this book and analyzing this book.
Yeah.
So I think there are 10 different possibilities for wrap-up activities in addition to additional writing prompts and discussion guides. Oh, that's the other thing, Jed. This book includes a number of, teachers could use them as writing prompts, but they also are really intended to be discussion prompts, because this is a great book to spark conversations and strong opinions. And I thought in that way, it also hits some of those speaking and listening standards that, it's really easy to gloss over those sometimes, but they are important. And this way, it can be a part of the book analysis.
You just hit on something that's been a passion of mine lately. It's just this need to teach not only our kids, but our whole society, to remind them that we can agree to disagree. And we can look at a subject from different perspectives and have different viewpoints on that. And we can share them without jumping down each other's throats and without hating each other. And this is a subject that I think is perfect. Kids are going to be coming from different perspectives and looking at this situation from very different angles. And for our kids to be able to sit down and be encouraged to speak and share their opinion, share their viewpoint, and also to be able to listen to those different viewpoints, to actually listen before you answer, to take a breath and relax and not be ready to jump down the person's throat, and then to respectfully share your opinion if it agrees or disagrees, and then hopefully the purpose of discussions isn't to come to complete agreement. It's just to kind of move the process forward for both of us and to help us move closer together, to solve a problem. So if that's the only thing that happens out of reading When Daronte's Father Went to Prison and using this study guide, that is huge, because we are so in need of that today.
Yes. Absolutely. And we're also in need of the ability to hear and comprehend perspectives that are different from our own. That's something that, if you look at Facebook in certain segments and Twitter, we're losing that. But it is critical in being able to understand each other and, all get along.
Yeah.
We don't all have to be alike. But this is everyone's country or everyone's classroom or everyone's home, so we have to be able to figure this out, how to work with each other.
Yeah. And I'm hearing more and more people at least saying this. So I'm hopeful that eventually the silent, because I one of the things I find there, and you're right, social media can be very horrible sometimes. And it's the same kind of 1% of my social media kind of world that always engage in the same kind of nonsense. And so hopefully that silent majority that we always talk about, whether we're talking about situations in school and, where the majority of kids know that someone's being bullied, but no one has the guts to really stand up and say anything about it yet until someone does. I'm hoping now that with these kind of discussions that we're having, and with resources like when Daronte's Father Went to Prison resource guide, teacher's guide, that we can start moving and getting more of those silent people to speak up and say, hey, can we all take a chill pill here and just kind of relax and see the humanity in each other, and understand that we're this isn't the Red Sox and the Yankees playing. This is this is just some people, and we have an issue, and we need to work it together so we can all live together in this world.
And Jed, that was the reason why for all of the text-dependent questions, as well as all of the writing prompts, the students make a claim and then they have to support it with evidence. Because, there's the whole, well, I have an opinion and therefore it's a fact. No, that's not how facts work. That's not how facts work. So I think that we need to start teaching that explicitly for those who may not be doing that. Explicitly teaching how to find evidence to support a viewpoint and what is evidence and what does not constitute evidence. I think that's critical.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Have you ever had any of these conversations? I believe this way. Well, the facts say something different. Well, I don't like those facts.
Right. Yes, exactly. Well, again,
I don't know what I can do.
That's not how facts work. No, it's not.
Oh man. Well, again, there's so much here that, that we can open up and peel back, and what a incredible resource. And I mean, that there are so many authors that we have on, and they hit on a topic and they do a great job writing a book, and then that's out and they're off to the next thing. But this is something that you've been incredibly passionate about, and you're dedicated to it, and you've been dedicating years of your life to it, and I'm so thankful that you're doing that, and so I know grade 5 is out now. What other grades
Yes.
are you working on?
Grade 4 is in progress, and it will be out. It won't make it before Thanksgiving, but the week after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Which is actually this week. Oh my gosh.
If you haven't bought your turkey yet, you need to get out and buy it, Kimberly. There are not many out there. So great.
I just came back from vacation, Jed.
Okay. Well, you deserve it. You've been
discombobulated.
You've been working so hard. So this is actually, people are going to be listening to this in December at some time. That's when they'll first hear this.
Great.
So
It'll be out.
grade 4 will be out. Are you working? Will you eventually have grade 3 or grade 6? Where are you looking?
I'm leaving it at grade 4 and grade 5
Okay.
at this point, simply because those are sort of the breakaway grades in terms of the standards. If you have a grade 4 study guide and you teach 3rd grade, you can kind of lower the intensity a bit. And if you have grade 5 and you want to teach it to grade 7, all you need to do is increase the expectation a bit.
So great.
But there are different standards for those 2 grades, 4th and 5th.
Okay.
It's sort of where the split between elementary and middle school begins.
Perfect. And if you've hung in here with us this long and you're still not buying the idea that, I know my kids, this isn't subject matter that my kids are going to be respond to. Just think about what shows, what's popular in popular media. It's those flawed characters, those, the superheroes. Well, now those superheroes are really all that super. They have these powers, but they're all flawed, and they come from flawed backgrounds. And and that's throughout all of literature. I think people are really attracted to these human beings with flaws, and I think it's because we all understand that we are flawed, and a lot of times the decisions that we make because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. 99% of the time we might make a different decision, but that one day, because of whatever circumstances, we make this opposite decision, and then suddenly our life is turned upside down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also think, Jed, that children in particular need to know that you don't have to be perfect to become a hero.
Absolutely.
And that's really the point of this story. You don't have to do everything perfectly to overcome a bad situation.
Yeah. Now, I want people to really check out the entire world of Kim Ballou and when Daronte's father went to prison. And I was just back on your website. It was a website that I checked out obviously when you were first on the show. It's really grown. It's
Yes.
really grown. We love that you brag about your certified great read recognition. But tell us where people can find you online.
People can find me online at KimberlyBallou.com. So that's KimberlyBallou.com.
Yep.
You can also go to Amazon.com and take a look at my author page. I have some great content up there. The book trailer is there. I'm also online on Twitter on at Daronte's father. And there is a When Daronte's Father Went to Prison Facebook page. And I would love it if your listeners would go there, and if they like the book or like the concept of the book, just like the page.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's great. And Kim is very active out there in social media, and her website is really great. And there's a blog there and all sorts of information. So check it out, KimberlyBallou.com. The name of her book is When Daronte's Father Went to Prison. The new teacher's resource guide for 5th and 4th graders are out and available right now. Check it out. Kimberly, I am so happy that we had this time to share again. Thank you so much for being back in the show.
Thank you, Jed. I so appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You're not going to believe it. We have a special spooky Christmas episode of the show for you, featuring the spooky middle grade authors. I am so very, very happy. We're going to be inviting back some guests that you've loved in the past, some brand new guests. They're all part of this great new collective of authors called the Spooky Middle Grade Authors. And they're going to be in here to share some spooky stories and also to create a spooky story right before your very ears. I can't wait. The very next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast, the Christmas episode of the podcast. Hey, we want to thank Kimberly Ballou for being here today. And, of course, we want to thank Dorothea Jensen for sponsoring this show. And absolutely, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.